You're listening to the AAF Analyzed podcast with your hosts, Derek Heid and Garrett Lay.
Hello, listeners. Garrett here with a quick word before the show starts. Being the busy students Derek and I are, we recorded this episode on Wednesday afternoon, so it would be ready to be released on Friday. Unfortunately, our can-do attitude came back to bite us, and the release of the starters threw us a couple of curveballs, including one particularly spicy one. It turns out Aaron Murray is not going to be the starter for the Legends. Crazy, I know. And instead it's going to be quarterback Matt Sims. So anytime we talk about Murray in the podcast, which we're going to a couple of times during the game preview, pretend we're talking about Sims, because he's going to play just as pivotal role. Sorry again for the mistake, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Hello and welcome to AAF Analyzed Week 1 preview. Before we get started, don't forget, if you're listening on YouTube, to like and subscribe. If you're on Soundcloud, to like and give us a follow, or subscribe and leave us a review on some of our Apple podcasts too. Follow us on Twitter at AAF Analyzed to keep up with the latest news and episode release announcements.
And make sure to keep an eye on that Twitter, as we'll be announcing a giveaway later this week. So you're definitely going to want to check that out on Twitter. And we'd also like to take a moment to shout out our international audience. So thank you to our listeners in the UK, Canada, Serbia, Finland, Russia, Singapore, Norway, and Ireland. When I saw that on the SoundCloud stats, I was pretty excited because that's pretty dope. So thank you, everyone, for listening. We're really starting to grow here, and this is super exciting. So thank you for your support.
We do also thank the American listeners as well. We know there's an awful lot of you all over the country. We appreciate you too. We were just really surprised by the foreign audience. And for everyone out there who thought that we are done with football until August, well, guess what? You're wrong.
Yeah, you idiot.
Because it's week 1.
You're wrong.
And we here at AAF Analyzed couldn't be more excited to get the season underway.
No, I'm excited. This is it's real now. It's real.
I couldn't agree more. With teams playing only one scrimmage against another team during camp, coaches across the Alliance are all in the same boat heading into week 1. They're creating game plans from film with just one of their opponent's games, leaving just about anything to be a possibility, especially considering that starters probably didn't play the whole game during those preseason games either.
No, and I don't think there were some starters, like Trent Richardson only got a couple carries.
Exactly.
We'll talk about it later, but a lot of the starters I don't even think even played. So it'll be interesting to see who's starting at what position. We still don't know all that much. Speaking of not knowing all that much, I know in our last episode we talked about the apps was supposed to be coming out between the 2nd and the 4th of February. It's still not out. Nobody knows anything. AAF Twitter has been abuzz asking the AAF when the app's coming out. There's been no response at all. It's kind of like we'd really like some info, and I think the AAF should kind of step up their game for that, but we're really hoping that it's going to come out before these games on Saturday. So just keep checking the App Store, keep checking the AAF website, and as soon as it comes out, we'll definitely be tweeting something out as well. So make sure to keep up with us on Twitter.
Yeah, definitely. The big question is, where's the app? And unfortunately, we can't answer that question for you either, because we don't know.
Nobody knows.
Except for, I would hope Charlie Ebersol knows where it is.
I hope it's probably somewhere.
Somewhere.
Okay, so this is going to be the first episode of many that are going to happen this season where we kind of preview what's coming up for the week here. Preview the games that are coming up. So if we want to go ahead and start off, we're going to start off with San Diego at San Antonio, Saturday, February 9th, the big kickoff game at 8 p.m.
This is at the Alamo Dome at San Antonio. It'll be a great game between the Fleet and the Commanders. Definitely some key things to look out for. And this will be one of those nationally televised games on CBS. This will be more the West Coast, but it'll definitely be a pretty good game. I'll kind of start off with some keys to the game, unless you got anything else to add.
No, go ahead. I think it's gonna be a good game. It's just super exciting to see the season really get underway here.
That's fair. So keys to the game for me. I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking about quarterback play. Will Dustin Vaughn be able to pick it up after that somewhat weak performance in the preseason game he had against the Legends? He only went 2 for 7 for 46 yards. I know he didn't play the whole game, so he didn't have a lot of time to kind of pick up the slack after that point in time. But 2 of 7, sheesh. That's not a very good percentage.
It's not great, but like I really don't know what they were doing in the preseason games, like for any team, because it's not even like a preseason game where you have like your third stringers in and stuff like that, like you would in the NFL offseason. It's like literally this is the first time they're playing, so they could be trying out any number of different combinations and things that they might use during the season, or it might have just been really an extensive training camp. So who really knows what these stats have to say?
Exactly. The preseason games were supposedly kind of like a rundown for the app, so I don't really know what happened there.
They might have found a lot of bugs. That's what
guess.
it kind of feels like right now. But
And on the opposite side of the football, the San Diego Fleet's expected starting quarterback is supposed to be Mike Bercovici. He had a fairly strong outing in the preseason, but call it luck or bad passes, he did throw 3 interceptions in his time on the field. In addition to the picks, he fumbled the ball 5 times too, but thankfully for him, only 2 were recovered by the defense.
2 still a lot to have recovered by the defense, particularly
Exactly.
after throwing 3 picks as well.
5 lost turnovers is just crazy.
Yeah.
And despite that bad interception and fumble stat, he was still 22 of 31 for 215 yards and a touchdown in that game.
Not being able to like watch the game, I don't know if maybe some of those. I know you said he fumbled the ball 5 times. Did you say a lot of those were like he literally just mishandled the snap, or was it like he was getting hit?
4 of the 5, I believe, were on sacks.
Okay, so it sounds like it could be a lot on the offensive line. Because he had solid stats other than those turnovers, so it could have been he was just having to make rush throws with pressure in his face and things like that. And I'm sure we'll see how the offensive line holds up this first game as well. So that might have had something to do with it.
Okay, but if you keep looking at that stat sheet from that game, backup quarterback Alex Ross went 14 of 17 for 131 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks.
Well, hey, there we go. He sounds more like a starter.
So what are the odds we see Alex Ross under center?
I think if the offensive line is holding up and it's not, and the mistakes are on Bercovici, I think there's a pretty solid shot we see Ross. I don't know if he'll start. I haven't heard anything. I haven't seen anything about who's actually going to start that game. But I do think there's a pretty solid chance that we see Ross.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm saying Ross will get more time than we think he will.
Yeah.
Fleet wide receiver Dontez Ford had 10 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown in the preseason game against the Apollos, so the Commanders will certainly be looking out for him.
That's what happens when you get a Pitt player on the field. Make big plays. What can I say?
And you miss the playoffs every year.
Well, not this year.
Despite their very good passing game, though, the Commanders seem to be led by their running game. And the preseason, they had 116 yards rushing without any of their running backs rushing the ball more than 8 times. And every back averaged over 2.5 yards a carry. So if Dustin Vaughn picks it up and they have that deadly running game, watch out for the Commanders.
Speaking of other offensive pieces, particularly for the Commanders, they have a really strong receiving core. Mikhail McKay, I'm going to talk about him later because I think he's going to have a great game. But the Fleet secondary seems a little weaker, so I'd look for Dustin Vaughn to really go and connect with that. And then for me, the Fleet linebackers are really going to have to step up and cover and shed the blocks of the Commanders' multiple huge tight ends. I know you talked about, what was his name?
The Commanders' tight end, Cam Clear.
Yeah, that really big guy. He's going to be hard to cover for a linebacker. He's almost an offensive lineman, as well as shedding the blocks for him when the Fleet goes to run the ball, or when the Commanders go to run the ball. So those linebackers of the Fleet are really going to have to step up.
Definitely. Speaking of defenses, that Commanders defense, watch out for them. Because if I'm reading this box score right from that preseason game, they had 10 sacks and the first safety in AAF history in their preseason game against Atlanta. Plus 2 picks and a recovered fumble.
Yeah, the Commanders' defense, they seem like a pretty solid play.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the defenses to look out for. I'm honestly surprised by what I've seen or read from them so far. And with Bercovici already sitting on 3 picks in the preseason game, I feel as if the pressure that the Commanders could force on him would definitely lead to some costly mistakes.
Oh, yeah. And you have written down here, he was sacked 7 times during their preseason game, so if the Commanders got 10 against Atlanta, I'm sure they're going to be able to get a handful of sacks, which, like I said, is probably going to bring out Ross in that game.
Definitely. Watch out, San Diego. The Commanders are coming for you. They're raiding the ship.
Okay, so you want to move into some players to watch this game? You can go ahead and talk about a couple players we want to watch here.
Players to watch, we're going to kind of merge this with potential fantasy stars for this week. Again, I got to reiterate, Fleet wide receiver Dontez Ford. When you play a preseason game and you have 10 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, you're not playing the whole game. And he already has 16 points for your fantasy team. So keep in mind that, again, this was a preseason game.
Yeah.
And he could double that maybe in the regular season. We'll just have to see.
That's awesome production. Do you know how many of those catches came from Berkovici and how many came from Ross?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, because it might come down to who he has a connection with. Because I know that was a big thing. That's why in fantasy this year I drafted Ertz because I knew Wentz was coming back and they had that great connection. That's why he catches so many balls from him. So if it's either Berkovici or Ross who has that really solid connection with him, I think he's going to be great, probably throughout the entire season, depending on who starts. But
it
we can see him having a lot of catches.
I was checking the box score. It looks like 7 were from Berkovici, 2 from Ross, and 2 from, I believe, their third string, Philip Nelson.
Okay, so it looks like Berkovici does like him. That's
exactly.
Good to hear.
Garrett, another fantasy star for you?
It's going to have to be that wide receiver for the Commanders, Mikhail McKay. He's been putting on a show in camp. He's been really one of the wide receiver standouts of any team. And the weak Fleet secondary offers him a chance to shine as long as Dustin Vaughn gets some time to throw the ball. So I think he's going to have a great game.
Yeah, I am with you there. Whoever starts at running back for the Commanders is definitely also going to be a good play. That could be Kenneth Farrow. I'm not 100% sure yet. At the time of this recording, we have not seen depth charts. I'd assume they're coming out soon, though.
Yeah, and it does look like Farrow seems to be leading the pack. So
exactly,
he looks to be good. And if you haven't drafted in fantasy yet, he's definitely someone you want to draft there as well.
And my other fantasy star for this game, Commanders defense. I said it in the keys to victory for this team. Berkovici's coming off a rough game. We've been over that. And this Commanders team is coming in hot. So let me tell you, this Commanders defense is going to be all over Berkovici. Plenty of sacks. I'm sure there'll be a couple turnovers. If you need a defense, tell him to go with San Antonio.
Yeah, I think San Antonio's defense is probably one of the strongest defensive plays for fantasy coming into this week. So we're going to go ahead and move into our game predictions for the week. Once again, these, just like our season predictions, these could be wildly wrong. We have literally nothing to base these off of except for some preseason stats that we have no idea what was going on in those games. But I'm going to go ahead, and my score prediction here is going to be San Antonio 25, San Diego 14. I think it's going to be close for a little while, but the Commanders' defense should take over. And Mikhail McKay, I'm saying he's hauling in at least one touchdown this game. And they should have a pretty dominant win.
Yep, I'm going to agree with you there. I've got San Antonio winning over San Diego 36-17, a little bit of a wider gap than you're thinking. Other than Dontez Ford for the Fleet, I saw very little to base a victory on. That offensive line had a really bad preseason game. They gave up 8 total sacks, 7 of which were to their potential starting quarterback. And last week, the San Diego game was the turnover capital of the world, and you're not winning a game when you're throwing 3 picks and putting the ball on the turf 5 times.
No, it's going to be a rough one, I think, for the Fleet, but I'm excited to see how it goes.
Absolutely.
So that is our first game of the week. Now on to the second one, which is once again the Saturday game, also at 8 p.m., which is Atlanta at Orlando.
Yep, this game is the game at the Bounce House. This will be the nationally televised game at CBS. For the East Coast of the United States, this should be a good one. The Apollos did have their first practice after the preseason game, and they're considering the players on their team freaks and large athletes of that Apollos defense.
That sounds
and they've got the sun and gun offense, too. They got right back in it on the practice field, made some nice plays during the combined portion of practice, breaking up passes, forcing interceptions. And I could see this could be a great game, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be one of the closer games of this
Yep.
week. Though I do think we have solid matchups all across the board.
And I'm very happy since we are in the East Coast, this will be the one that we get to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. All right, so you want to go ahead and give us your first key of the game, Derek?
The key for Atlanta, get Aaron Murray hot. In the preseason game
he's
for
hot.
Orlando, they gave up 382 passing yards to a shaky at best San Diego Fleet offense. In my opinion, Aaron Murray is a better quarterback than any of those that we just mentioned for the Fleet. So if Mike Vick and the Atlanta offense can get Murray up and around 300 yards, look out.
Now, Murray had a rough preseason, but like I've been saying over and over again, the preseason stats, you can look at them, but I wouldn't take them as scripture there because I'm sure things will wildly change once the season starts.
Again, that stat line for Murray, he went 10 of 14 for 88 yards and 1 interception.
Yeah, so really not great, but 10 of 14 is nice. It means he's at least completing the passes. Not very far downfield, but who knows what they were working with and whatever. And speaking of that offense and Aaron Murray, the key for me really is how well Mike Vick can coach an offense and what he can bring to the table as a coach. Because I believe this is his first job in any coaching capacity, and if he handles it well, I'm really excited to see how he creates an explosive offense because he was just an electric factory on the field when he played. So I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do with the talent he has. And speaking of getting Murray hot, part of that's going to require the Legends wide receivers to get hot and make plays against a questionable Apollo secondary that allowed a 100-yard receiver in their preseason game. So look for those Atlanta Legends wide receivers to heat up as well.
That's a very good point. You were talking about Mike Vick, though. I gotta ask the question: where's the running game?
I have no idea.
Atlanta in their preseason game, they had 30 total rushing yards.
Yeah, that's
14 of which were by quarterbacks.
That's pretty low. That's not many.
So, offensive coordinator Mike Vick may not be valuing the run too much.
That's
which
going to
could prove fatal.
Yeah, you're going to want to watch out for that in fantasy as well. If they turn out not to be a huge running team, you're definitely going to want to lean on that passing game.
Another thing, yep. And if you look at Orlando, though, they don't really boast a good running game either. Orlando ran for 66 total yards, with the only rushing touchdown for them coming on a quarterback sneak. So, quite frankly, neither of these teams post a deadly running game or appear to have a deadly running game going in this Week 1 game. So whoever will be able to break out a successful running game first could prove to have something that their opponent doesn't.
Yeah, if you can put the defense off balance after throwing on them for most of the game with some nice solid runs, particularly close to the end, if you have the lead, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. Final scores of those preseason games, though, the Orlando Apollos beat the Fleet 31-28, and the Legends got whooped.
Yes, they did.
They lost 37-11 to San Antonio in the preseason game. Legends gave up 10 sacks. They only had 30 rushing yards. Their starting quarterback barely had a good game and just didn't seem like a very good time.
No, this was interesting to me because they are one of, if you look at the Vegas odds and things like that, they are one of the teams favored to go all the way by the end of the season. So it was interesting they had such a rough preseason game. I'm sure they're still figuring plenty of things out, though.
Kevin Coyle, that was his first head coaching game of his career because he has never been a head coach before, only assistant offensive coordinator stuff.
Yeah, so this is a relatively inexperienced coaching staff, so I'm sure they're going to get their feet under them. Okay, so now on to some potential fantasy stars. You have 2 listed here, so you can go ahead and spout those off.
Yep, I'll start with Apollo's wide receiver Ishmael Hyman. He had limited playing time, but with that, Hyman did catch a 60-yard bomb and took it to the house for a touchdown. He ended with 68 yards and a touchdown in that preseason game. But again, as I keep bringing up, you're not playing the whole game in the preseason, so you could double that, and it's just you could get more than that. And he's already getting around 12 points.
That's great production. It's like you said they're called freaks and large athletes is what they're calling their players. And that seems to be a theme around the league. I think there's going to be a lot of big plays week in and week out, 60, 70-yard touchdown passes. These guys are quick. These guys are big. I think there's going to be maybe the next show on turf.
Definitely. Garrett, you want to go with yours?
So my potential fantasy star, it's another defense. Kind of boring, but still pretty exciting. I think the Apollos defense, they're kind of a sleeper here because if the Legends offense gets going, they're going to be dangerous. But if they can't get it together and put on a show similar to the preseason, the Apollos defense should have an absolute field day since the Legends were only able to put up 11 points during that preseason game.
Yep. And my final potential fantasy star for this game, Legends quarterback Aaron Murray. Even though his stats in the preseason game don't really jump off the page at you, we did bring up he had a pretty good completion percentage. And the Legends' lack of an established run game could prove helpful in a fantasy setting because they're just going to be tossing a lot of passes out there for Murray. High volume could equal a lot of points.
Absolutely. Speaking of a lot of points, we're going to go ahead and move into the predictions here. I have Atlanta actually winning this game. It's a little bit of an upset considering their preseason performance, but I have Atlanta 27, Orlando 24. It's going to be a close one. Probably going to be require a game-winning field goal to be kicked, but I do think Atlanta's going to get it together here and prevail.
I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
I'm going with Orlando beating Atlanta in this game 27-22. Despite the previous game showing that both teams struggle offensively, that Orlando defense thrived against the Fleet. They had 8 sacks in that game. In the Legends' in their preseason game, they gave up 10 themselves. So that Orlando front seven will have a great day. The Orlando also had 3 picks in that game. They had 2 fumble recoveries. And this defensive dominance just really makes me think that Orlando's going to win this opening game in a close one.
All right, so those are our predictions for the Atlanta-Orlando game. Once again, that is also at 8 p.m. February 9th. You'll be watching that here if you live on the East Coast. Next game is Memphis at Birmingham, which is Sunday, February 10th at 4 p.m. This is the earliest game of the 4. And fun fact here, the Iron, they're having their first game. It's the team's blackout, so the first 20,000 fans who go to the game get free black T-shirts. And the Birmingham mayor, Randall Woodfin, declared this Friday, February 8th, as Black Friday, urging citizens to wear all black to honor the Iron in conjunction with the team's first game. I think this is pretty sick.
Definitely.
It means the community's connecting with the AAF now, and they're getting the message out there, which is something we love to hear. So I think that's really cool for the city of Birmingham to bring in a football team and the mayor to really bring attention to them.
Yeah, I think that's really exciting that Birmingham's already going all in. They're embracing this team with open arms.
It's a football culture down there with Alabama and Auburn. So you know people are going to love having an actual team there.
Definitely. It'll be exciting to see because I think that they're really going to put their arms around this team, and I feel like they could potentially be one of the better fan bases in the league too.
All right.
This game will be on CBS Sports Sunday at 4, so make sure you're watching out for that if you have CBS Sports.
All right, so you want to hit us with your first key to the game.
Yeah, another thing, Memphis in that first practice, they were kind of weird about committing on their starting quarterback.
Okay.
But despite this, Christian Hackenberg, out of the potential starting quarterbacks in the AAF, Hackenberg had the best day at the preseason games. He was 9 of 15. He had 128 yards and 1 touchdown.
Okay.
He played probably about a third of the game, and it was just all around a good performance for Hackenberg, and I think he won the job, and I think it's kind of weird that Mike Singletary isn't saying that he's the guy going into week 1.
So if he is the guy going into week 1, do you think his play is really going to be one of the keys to this game?
Yes, because that Iron defense is coming off a game where they gave up 36 points. And if Hackenberg is as good as the stats are suggesting, the Iron could be in for a rough day.
Sounds good. So I think, speaking of the Iron here, on the other side of the ball for the Iron's offense, I think their offensive line is really going to play a big role here. I talked a lot about them being an Alabama offensive line. big, strong bruisers in the trenches, and I think that they're going to play a huge role in this game.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the stats from that game, I believe the Iron were the only team in the AAF to not give up a sack in their preseason games.
That's already a testament to that discipline that the Alabama offensive line has.
And behind that offensive line, the Iron are really seeming like they're valuing that running game a lot, which could mean with a good offensive line comes a great running game. The Express gave up 117 rushing yards to the Stallions in their preseason game, which is more good news for the Iron, because if they're going to keep rushing the ball, you want to go up against a team that struggled against it.
Yeah, and once again, this will really help in the passing game too. Louis Perez, the Irons quarterback, he's a great quarterback and he's a great leader, but he's only played D2 football before, so I don't know how much he's been getting hit by like really big, strong, particularly linebackers and linemen. So I think if this O-line steps up and gives him the time he needs, I think he's going to be able to deliver some excellent throws. But they're going to really have to step up and let him get his feet under him in this bigger setting than he's really ever played in before.
Yep, the Iron offense definitely has potential to break out and surprise us. But another one of those keys for me, can the Iron defense hold? In the preseason game against the Hotshots, the Iron gave up nearly 200 yards and 3 touchdowns to a quarterback and running back duo who, as of today, aren't expected to even start for the Hotshots. And by these numbers, the Iron D did have a pick six, but that means that the defense had as many touchdowns in that game as the offense did, because they ended with 17 points.
Yeah, that's really not what you want to hear. I mean, a pick six, of course, can be huge because it can shift momentum of the game, and I think it's one of the most exciting plays in football. But if you're only taking the ball away once and you're still giving up a ton of offense, it's going to be hard to use that pick six to your advantage. The Iron defense is definitely going to have to play a far better game than they did in the preseason to win this one.
Absolutely.
So if we want to move to players to watch, fantasy stars, I have right now the Express wide receiver Fabian Guerra, right?
Yeah.
Guerra. In the preseason, he had 3 receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown. Like you've been saying, they aren't playing the full game, so 3 receptions, 45 yards. He's taking great advantage of the receptions he has. Getting almost a little over 10 yards a catch as well as a touchdown. So that's pretty exciting there.
Yep. Another one for me, the Express running back Rajon Neal. Neal had a pretty good preseason. He put up in that game, he put up 6 carries for 47 yards. And this stat line, plus his crazy speed, he runs like a sub 4.4. Puts Rajon Neal on major notice for me. Definitely be watching out for him.
You, of course, got to watch out for Zach Stacy as well. He's the other kind of starting running back on the Express roster here, or at least he's in the shot to be the starter. He has NFL experience. He's a strong runner, so look out for him too.
Yep. Express quarterback Christian Hackenberg's another one for me. I was really surprised by the stat line Hackenberg put up, because playing 1/3 of the game, 128 yards and a touchdown, definitely has potential fantasy upside. If you need a quarterback, maybe he's in free agency, I'd go with Hackenberg, honestly.
And then it's going to be whoever is running the ball for the Iron. You said we really don't know. I know you looked into it a lot, and there really was there were 5 backs, and they each had 5 carries during that preseason game.
Yeah.
So it's all over the field for the Iron. We'll have to see who's actually running the ball. I think if Richardson gets it, he's going to be a great start against an Express defense that gives up a ton of rushing yards, at least according to their preseason stats they do. So if we can figure out who's going to be running that football, I think whoever's running that is going to be a good start.
Yep, I did dive into that game a little bit more. The Iron ran the ball 25 times in that preseason game, so whoever could be the premier back, again, it's anybody's guess, they could have the potential of seeing the ball a lot, and if that's Trent Richardson, he's probably worthy of a first-round pick in fantasy.
Absolutely. All right, on to the predictions here for the game. I have the Iron beating the Express here. This is a little bit of an upset, but I like the sound of it. Iron 17, Memphis 14. Once again, I'm feeling a game-winning field goal type situation here. I think it's going to be a little slow on offense because of the heavy run games I think we're going to see out of this game. But I do have the Iron winning 17-14.
You're nuts. I got Memphis winning 22, Birmingham 19. Despite all the question marks I pointed out for the Iron, I really do feel like this could be a trap game for the Express, but I think that the Express have enough talent here to get it done. I feel like behind that good offensive line, though, the Iron will surprise Memphis with a really good running game, and Luis Perez should have a good amount of time in the pocket to get passes off. But Hackenberg's game, Rajah Neal's speed, I just really think that Singletary is going to get this defense together for the Express, and I think Memphis is going to come up big in the fourth quarter and get a close win.
Okay, but I'm not that nuts. You did say they'll probably have a good running game.
I guess.
All right, on to the final game of the weekend. We'll be wrapping up the first ever weekend of AAF football with Salt Lake at Arizona on Sunday, February 10th at 8 p.m. Once again, I think this might be one of the best games of the week. It's probably the game I'm second most excited for, but behind the Legends and the Apollos.
I could agree with that.
Go ahead, hit us with your keys to the game, Derek.
Real quickly, this game will be the first AAF game on NFL Network. Again, that is Sunday at 8 p.m. Prime time game. Definitely be looking out for it. A lot of people have NFL Network, so you should be able to get it. Keys to the game for me, looking at the Stallions first. The Stallions passing game, does it exist? In their preseason game against the Express, the Stallions only passed the ball 18 times. Not a single one of their three quarterbacks threw for over 50 yards or a touchdown. And there were no wide receivers that caught for more than
That's
that
worrying,
caught more
particularly in
than
the
two
fantasy
passes.
realm, that not a single wide receiver caught more than two passes because they have solid wide receivers on that team. Just not catching more than two passes. I don't know how many targets they had, but that's really not great production from the air there. Okay.
A couple had 4, but it was
Okay.
mainly 2 or 3. It was just really strange game for them. And another thing that both of us pointed out, the Stallions appear to have a pretty good run game. With Joel Buagnon, I hope I'm saying that right. Yes, the Stallions only threw the ball 18 times, as I just said, but the Stallions ran the ball 26 times, and 11 of those carries went to Joel Buagnon. Buagnon rushed for 54 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. At his college pro day, Buagnon only ran a 4.66 40 though, so you look out for him to be one of the good power
Those are
backs
really
in the
solid
league,
numbers. I was
honestly.
surprised not seeing Asiata play. I wasn't able to find any info on why he didn't, or if he is going to start. We had our fantasy football draft last night, and I did pick up Asiata, but I think Buagnon really does seem to have maybe the starting spot kind of as his to lose because they do seem to be similar runners. Asiata a little slower as well, but great with power, though he does have the NFL experience that Buagnon does not.
Yep. Another one of the keys for me, how does Trevor Knight bounce back? Knight's coming off a pretty underwhelming preseason debut. He threw 4 of 9
That
for
is
44 yards. and a pick.
underwhelming to say the least.
Yes. I've been hyping him up the entire season. I know a lot of people have been. And I really doubt that Arizona will be quick to back away from their star QB. But I think how he's going to rebound from this is definitely going to be a really good story for this primetime game.
Speaking of throwing picks and the secondary, the Hotshot secondary, this is my keys for the game here. Their secondary was the talk of camp, pulling in a ton of picks. And in their preseason game against Birmingham, they came up with a big pick 6. And they have experience and are led by a great safety with NFL experience in Raheem Moore. So that really seems to be where the Hotshots are going to draw a lot of their strength from. And how they're going to get the ball to their offense by creating turnovers and locking down that secondary. That's why I think a lot of this game is going to come down to the Stallions' ground game. Like you said, their passing game already almost doesn't exist, and this hotshot secondary sounds like it's absolutely suffocating. So I'm really feeling like if the Stallions can get the ball through the line of scrimmage, the Hotshots have a pretty solid front seven, but it's definitely their secondary that shows the most danger to the Stallions. So if they can really run that football, I think they have a good shot at winning this game. But that Hotshots secondary is dangerous.
All right. I think that really bodes
It
well
does.
for Arizona in this game. Players to watch for me. I'm going to say it again. Trevor Knight. He came off of that pretty underwhelming debut. I don't really know if he's the top quarterback to start week 1, but he's got the talent for sure. That's no doubt. And I think that he could definitely bounce back and
he'll be
fun to watch. He'll be fun to watch. I don't know if he's the right pick for fantasy.
Speaking of players that he's going to have to throw to, I think Freddie Martino looks solid. He looks like he's going to probably be the wide receiver number 1 for the Hotshots here. And he put in solid work in the preseason. He has a pretty favorable matchup against a young Stallion secondary. Their secondary is talented, but they don't have the experience that the Hotshots secondary has. So look for him to have a pretty solid game.
Yep. For me, Stallions running back Joel Buagnon, in that limited playing time, again, he didn't play the whole game. 54 yards, 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion. So he should be expected to be the starter, and rightfully so, as he exposed the Express in that game.
Expose him!
If that Hotshots secondary is as good as you're making it sound, that just means that there's going to be more running for Joel. And I'm going to say he's a great start for this week.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give my prediction for this game. I know I was hyping up the Hotshot secondary a ton or whatever, but I do actually have Salt Lake coming out on top of this game, 30-24 against Arizona. I think that their running game really has a potential to take over, and they scored a lot of points despite only throwing the ball 18 times, so it's not like their running game isn't productive on offense. So I think they're going to come out on top here.
I don't understand how you could talk up Arizona so much and then bring them down right at the end. I got Arizona winning 31-25. Both teams won their preseason game by 14 or more points, so I think that this game will be the best game of the 4. And I think that this will be a tightly contested battle, but ultimately I think that experience of Trevor Knight will help the Hotshots take over this game and win it in the air. That plus the Hotshots secondary going to probably choke out that Stallions passing game just makes me think that the air routes are going to be all Arizona's. There's going to be a lot of hard-fought rushing yards, but the winner of this game will be the person who makes a clutch play in the air, and right now I'm thinking that's going to be Arizona.
It's a safe bet having
the Hotshots.
Having them make that clutch play in the air. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on. I know we've been talking fantasy football throughout this, but we're going to go ahead and go to our little segment here that we've decided to call the plug or pass section of fantasy football. We're going to be talking about who you should plug into your lineup this week and who you should pass on putting in your lineup this week. So, Derek, go ahead. Who are some of your plugs for this week?
All right, plug number 1 for me. I got to start with Christian Hackenberg, the Memphis Express quarterback. He just really impressed me in the preseason game. He had that 9 of 15, 128 yards and a touchdown. I know that's not a full game, so I think that over time he will be able to impress. I really like the Memphis wide receivers as well, and I really think that he will impress you. If you need a good quarterback, I'm telling you, Hackenberg is going to be a really safe play week 1.
One of my plugs here is the Commanders' defense. The Fleet's offense doesn't seem really to know what direction they're going in yet, and they were a turnover factory last week in the preseason. So I'm really feeling like the Commanders' defense is just a team you can just set in that lineup and forget about it because they're going to be plugged in and ready to play.
I could agree with you there. I like that one. And my second plug, Stallions running back Joel Buagnon. There is no official depth chart at the time of recording this, but I believe that Buagnon will be the starter for the Stallions in his limited playing time, 54 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, the 2-point conversion. And I think he can just potentially expose Arizona's front seven if they're going to be focusing on the secondary.
And speaking of another running back, my second plug of the game is going to be Trent Richardson if he's the starting running back for the Iron. This is a big if here. So it kind of doesn't make sense to make him a plug, but I'm making him a plug anyway because, hey, what the heck, this is our show. They're going to run the ball a lot. We saw that in preseason. They're called the Iron, for crying out loud. They just running the ball seems to be in their blood. So plug Trent Richardson if he's a starting running back this week. I think he's going to be solid. All right, now on to who you should pass and keep them out of the lineup. I'll go ahead and start here. I'd pass on the Stallions receivers. We don't know if they have any passing game at all. It could be non-existent. And the Hot Shots secondary is very, very stingy, so I'd stay away from any sort of Stallions wide receiver. I think they'd be a pretty dangerous start.
Would you also be telling them to pass on Josh Woodrum, the starting quarterback?
I don't know if you want to pass on him, but like he's gonna be like a last resort kind of thing. Unfortunately, he is my last resort in our fantasy league that we just drafted for. So I'm gonna have to be starting him, unless if I decide to go with Luis Perez, which is, I actually haven't even decided that, but I might want to stay away from him. And that's a great point because that Hot Shot secondary is scary.
To be determined. For me, number one pass, Trent Richardson. You have him in as a plug, and I'm just going to be leaving all our viewers with what should I do here? Trent Richardson, in that preseason game, he was one of 4 backs to have 4 carries. He only had 15 yards. His longest rush was just 6 yards. We don't know if he's starting. That offensive line's good, so if he is starting, maybe he's a plug. But I have a bad feeling that the Iron are going to be running a split back system with Richardson and some other people. And I think that a lot of people are taking Richardson number 1 because he's the name that they know. And personally, I'm going to be the one to say it. I really think you got to pass on your lineup.
Well, I disagree with you wholeheartedly, but that's okay. So my second pass is going to be the Fleet defense. They did not play well in the preseason. They're playing a very strong offense in the San Antonio Commanders. Just keep them out of your lineup. There's other options. I doubt your league has more than 6 players in it if you're doing the full fantasy league. Once again, that's on altsports.com. But if you're doing that, just keep the Fleet defense out of it for this week. I want them to surprise me. I really do. But I just keep them out of it for now because we don't know what's going on.
Well, while we're on the topic of the Fleet, Mike Bercovici, he's the Fleet starting quarterback, we assume. He had some good stats for him in the preseason game, 215 yards, 1 touchdown. He threw 3 interceptions. He put the ball on the ground 5 times. There's better quarterbacks out there to take a chance on than Bercovici at the moment. I'd say give him a week, kind of see what he does in this week 1 game. And
all right, so those are our plug and pass players. And sticking with this little theme of electricity, as in plugging them into your lineup, we're going to have a one special player each every week. One that's going to be electric on the field, make some big plays and really charge up the offense. They're going to be called our power players. So my power player for the week is going to be Mekeel McKay for the San Antonio Commanders, that wide receiver I've been talking about so much. Great camp. Great hands, great talent overall, and he's playing a weaker Fleet defense, so look for him to absolutely blow up.
My power player, I know I just told you to stay away from his quarterback, Fleet wide receiver Dontez Ford. That preseason game, 10 catches for 100 yards. If Bercovici's playing, it seems like he's just going to start lobbing them up to Ford, and Ford's going to come down with them. So I don't know if that's a risk you want to take with Bercovici, but a wide receiver that's just taking lobs, give him to me. Dontez Ford.
It's all about volume. Even if his quarterback doesn't play that well, if all of Bercovici's completed passes are going to Ford, he's going to be a must start. So, Yep.
If you look at the NFL, like that, like 4 or 5 of the top 5 receivers are like on
And it's
teams
just
that didn't
because
make the
they're the
playoffs.
guys getting the ball thrown to them. So if you're a playmaker and you're getting the ball in your hands, doesn't matter who's throwing you that ball, you're probably going to have a big play that's going to be great for fantasy lovers.
Definitely.
No, that's
Anything
pretty
else
much
you wanna
it.
add?
I'd say that wraps it up for our first ever week preview. We're going to be coming out with another episode either Monday or Tuesday, wrapping up, seeing
Thank
how
you for listening
probably
to the
absolutely wrong we
AAF
were about
Analyzed
almost
podcast.
everything,
Follow
or
the show on
we'll be
Twitter
100% right,
AAF
or maybe
Analyzed,
somewhere in
and
the
feel
middle.
free to contact the show to
So-
have your questions featured.
We disagreed
on
on
a future
3
episode.
games.
Yeah, we're gonna
so
be
someone's
probably
gotta
be
be
keeping
right.
score. You want to keep
Show
score
on
throughout
all
the
other
entire season.
platforms such as iTunes,
Okay, so we'll be
SoundCloud,
keeping
and
score,
YouTube.
announcing that at the end of every week, how we did. So it's super exciting. First week of AAF football is here. Our football hangover did not have to last very long, as we're going to be getting a shot of exciting football straight into the veins this week. So it's exciting stuff. Hopefully that app comes out. That's what we're really looking forward to, so we can stream the games as well and maybe see some of that play-by-play and weekly fantasy stuff as well. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at AAF Analyzed, because that contest is going to be coming out soon. We are approaching 150 followers there. As soon as we do, I'll be tweeting out the info for that contest. You're going to be able to win a hat or t-shirt of your choice from the AAF store that we will ship directly to your house, and you can rock the merch. Some of their stuff is really, really nice. They have some nice new era hats, some nice performance t-shirts and things like that that you're going to be able to choose from. Awesome merch, awesome